Hi everyone, welcome back. Mindy Egan Design here, and today I'm sharing my second card for my guest designer post with Newton's Nook, and this is featuring Bitty Bunnies stamp set. I'm going to start off by creating my background. I am using a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of Bristol smooth cardstock, and I'm taping that to the back of my diamond circles stencil, and then I'm also going to tape my stencil down to my craft mat. This is just going to ensure that my paper isn't going to move since it's smaller than the stencil, and that my stencil doesn't move when I start applying the ink. So I'm going to be using Distress Oxide inks for this. These blend really well together. I really like the colors that they have available. So I'm starting off with Squeeze Lemonade, and I'm going to start in that top corner and just work in soft circular motions, blending down. Then I'm going to come in with the Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to use the same way I applied the Squeeze Lemonade, just a light circular motion over that stenciled area. The more of this color I apply, the darker that color is going to get. And then once I have the Abandoned Coral on there and I kind of blend it into the Squeeze Lemonade a little bit to soften that line, I'm going to come in with the shaded Lilac Distress Oxide, and this is just a really nice purple light shade. I thought these colors worked really well together and were nice and springy. And I'm going to finish that diagonal pattern off, and I'm going to blend into the Abandoned Coral a little bit just to soften those lines. Once I have my background ink blended, I'm going to come in with some Glimmer paste, and this one that I have is Moonstone. It's kind of a iridescent, I guess, so to speak. It picks up the color that's behind it. So if you have just white cardstock, you're going to have, just the white, but this is going to pick up the color that's behind it, and it's going to be just gorgeous. So the first thing I did is I'm stirring that up just a little bit, and then I'm going to take a couple scoops and place them around my card. And I'm just going to kind of flatten that, kind of like icing a cake, you could say. So once I have those on there, I'm going to come through and start spreading that over my area. I don't want to double dip because, or I'm going to be careful if I do, because being with this Distress Oxide, it is going to pick up those colors. And I didn't realize that at first when I was doing this. So I'm just carefully getting a few more scoops, making sure not to contaminate my jar. So I flatten that across my entire stencil, and you can make this as thin of a layer or as thick of a layer as you want. I just try to smooth out all my areas, and then I can scrape off the excess. And like I said, this is something you want to be careful with if you're using it on top of colors, because you don't want to put that colored leftover back into the jar. And also with these, you are going to want to clean your palette knife and stencils right away. I actually stopped and went and rinsed mine off. These just come clean with some water. I just rubbed mine a little bit with my hands and then towel dried it. Otherwise, you're going to get this, it's going to dry all over your stencil and your craft mat. So just make sure you clean these right away. And once I have that spread out, I'm going to carefully and slowly remove my painter's tape there that had the stencil held down, because I don't want to slip or bump anything. So just carefully taking that off. And I also have that tape on the back too, so I'm just being careful to peel that back. I did make this a little bit bigger of a panel because I knew I was going to trim it down. That way if I did get any smudge marks on the edges or anything, I wasn't too worried about that. So now we have this beautiful sparkly ink blended background. And then just make sure to wash off your stencils right away. Now I'm going to come in with this super cute Bitty Bunnies stamp set from Newton's Nook Designs. And I actually only ended up using one of the bunnies, so that's just the part I'm going to show you here as far as the coloring. I'm only using a few colors for this, and I'll have those colors listed on this video and also in my description below the video too. And I start out with my darkest color. I'm just applying shading where I think it would go. So for instance, right behind the ears, I think the ears would cast a shadow right behind them. And then also where the paws are sitting in front of face, they would cast a shadow. I put a little bit around the edges of the face, and then the bottom of the paws where it's closest to the ground, I believe would cast a shadow. And then I'll come through with my lighter colors and blend those out. So I work darkest to lightest, and I do typically do 2 layers of coloring with my Copics. I'll come back in with that darkest color. I might not go around all of the edges as much as I did the first time, but I'm just making sure these have a really nice smooth blend. And I think these bunnies, as little brown bunnies, are just the cutest with their little ears crooked over like that. Just adorable. So I'll get that coloring finished off, and there's also coordinating dies that you can purchase that will cut these out perfectly. Little pinks in the ears and on the nose, and then just a little bit of gray actually on the tail. So for my sentiment, I'm using this white piece of cardstock that I cut from the Frames and Flags die from Newton's Nook, and I just wipe that over with my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to ink up this cute little sentiment, "You are irresistible," and I'm using VersaFine ink because that is an ink that stays wet a little longer. And then I'm going to apply, once I have that stamped on my banner, I'm going to apply some of the embossing powder. So that's why I use the anti-static powder tool, so that none of that powder sticks to my banner. So I'm just going to use a scratch piece of paper to catch my excess. So I'll sprinkle that on, flick off the extra. That's one thing that's really nice about the VersaFine is it does stay wet a little longer. So this is just going to have a really nice shine. And then I'll just heat that up with my heat tool. Now to finish off the card and get this all put together, I did go ahead and trim down my panel to 4 by 5 1/4, and then I applied some craft foam to the back, and I'm using some double-sided tape on that craft foam to attach it to my A2 size card base so that it has a little bit of dimension with that craft foam. And you just want to be real careful with that double-sided tape because it is a really good adhesive. So when you put it down, cross your fingers, you have all your edges lined up straight. And now we have that beautiful panel for the front of our card. And then I'm also attaching my sentiment with the double-sided tape because I thought that would have a really nice good hold on top of that glimmer paste. And then I'll be attaching the bunny with some foam tape just to give it a little bit more added dimension. And that's going to finish off my card for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead, give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I will have all of my supplies listed on my blog and also in the video description below. And be sure to head over and check out Newton's Nook Designs. I'll have their link below as well. Thanks so much for stopping by, and see you in the next video.